You won't none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel. And in this huddle, we're going to talk about something, man, that's it's a little concerning to me. And it has to do with the University of North Carolina, NC State University, and basically conference realignment and a recent policy change that transpired with the North Carolina University Board of Governors, in which basically they've given themselves the power to control entities within the UNC University system and their conference affiliation. I want to talk about basically what that means for the University of North Carolina and, how it affects them and how it is something that should be concerning if you are a Tar Heel. Now, the question is let's just say the University of North Carolina wanted to exit the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the money is not a problem, the exit fees, et cetera, okay? What you would have to do now, according to this new policy change, is you would have to seek approval from the system president, the University of North Carolina system president, which is currently Mr. Peter Hans, okay? Now, there are 17 universities, if I'm not mistaken, within the University of North Carolina, college, university, public school system, if you will. Duke is a private school. Wake is a private school. These don't pertain to them, but it really doesn't matter too much right now because they don't have a ton of suitors, if you will, at least currently. So what does a university now have to do if they're wanting to move conferences, which has been a huge topic within the last couple of years, right? You've got USC and UCLA moving out of the Pac-12, right? They go to the Big Ten. Texas and Oklahoma get out of the Big 12. They go to the SEC. It effectually basically destroys the Pac-12. It completely disbands. And then you have schools like Stanford, Cal, SMU, all these different universities that are scrambling to find a conference because basically in California, or at least at that time, they were free to go if they could afford, whatever buyouts that they had to do. Well, with this new policy change, it's a little bit different in the state of North Carolina. So the chancellor of the school, okay, if North Carolina would want to get out of the Atlantic Coast Conference and money is not an issue, the chancellor of the school would have to provide the system president advance notice of that move in addition to a financial plan to go along with it, right? How it would benefit that university. The president can either approve or reject the plan. If the president approves the plan, he has to notify the Board of Governors, okay, this is within the University of North Carolina system, which then can bring the proposal to a vote. If rejected, the school would have to restart the process. It's big, man, because there are a ton of people from different schools that have personal interests in this, situation, if you will. So what's the recent history of conference realignment within the 17 schools that make up the North Carolina University system? The Atlantic Coast Conference has literally been the big dog in the state of North Carolina, like we all know, since its inception. There were 7 original members to include Clemson, Duke, Maryland, UNC, NC State, South Carolina, and Wake Forest. Now with the recent addition of Cal, SMU, and Stanford, the ACC currently stands at 18 total teams. Now, some history of conference realignment here, in the not so distant past, if you will. The University of North Carolina, Charlotte switched from Conference USA to the American Conference in 2023. It's literally a year ago, and no one batted an eye. I wonder why. East Carolina went to the American back in 2014. App State joined the Sun Belt back in 2014. No one batted an eye. And this isn't just something that's new. There have been tons of, in-state schools that have jumped from conferences. They've tried to get into a better conference. Just all sorts of conference realignment changes within the University of North Carolina public school system. But no one really batted an eye until basically the Power Five became the Big Two, the SEC and the Big Ten. And, here's the situation, okay? The reason that they passed this policy change is for no other reason than to tie the University of North Carolina and NC State together after what happened in California with the implosion of the Pac-12 and Cal and Stanford being left out to dry. You had 4 schools, okay? What were the 4 schools? And it's really just one, okay? The Big Ten wanted USC, okay? But it was kind of a package deal with UCLA. And nobody really wanted Cal or Stanford. So what did they do? They plucked them out of the Pac-12. It started a mass exodus. The Pac-12 literally imploded to where there basically is no more Pac-12. And then Cal and Stanford have to stink and play in the Atlantic Coast Conference, as if that makes any sense. The simple fact of the matter is this policy change has everything to do with the University of North Carolina and NC State University. But I would also be remiss if I didn't say that there were other economic factors involved, okay? The ACC headquarters is in Charlotte, North Carolina. The 2024 ACC Football Championship is at Bank of America in Charlotte, North Carolina. The 2025, 26, and 28 men's ACC basketball tourney, it's in Charlotte. 27 and 29, it's in Greensboro, all in North Carolina. Baseball, 24, 26, and 28, it's in Charlotte. 25, 27, and 29, it's in Durham. It's all in North Carolina. So the amount of revenue that these events bring into the state are huge in an attempt to strong-arm in-state universities into keeping the ACC intact. I'm not going to lie. Economically, for the state of North Carolina, the ACC remaining an entity is a good thing. But the question is how good is it for the individual institution of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, right? So there is an economic factor in attempting to hold this thing together for the state. There's no doubt about that. But the real question is, should that stop individual universities from doing what's best for them? All Homer aside, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I'm just going off of what other pundits have already stated. But those close to the Big Ten and those close to the SEC have all advised the same thing. UNC and Virginia are areas that both of the Big Two conferences want to tap into. But it's UNC and UVA. Those are the attractive teams according to all these people that are close to those conferences. And this may rub Virginia Tech wrong, in the state of Virginia, and it may rub NC State wrong in the state of North Carolina, but it doesn't matter. It is what it is. If it was vice versa, it is what it is. Just because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's not the truth. So, what teams are attractive to these two conferences? Mainly, it's the University of North Carolina and the University of Virginia. The question becomes, does the Virginia legislature do to UVA and Virginia Tech what they've already accomplished with the University of North Carolina and NC State? The fear for the UNC Board of Governors is that if UNC leaves the ACC, it would be detrimental to NC State financially, especially if it causes a mass exodus from the Atlantic Coast Conference and it implodes like the Pac-12 did, forcing NC State University to look for a new conference home, which would probably be something like the Big 12, right? There just wouldn't be the same revenue sharing if North Carolina went to the SEC or the Big Ten, and then NC State was stuck having to go somewhere like the Big 12. So, for the Wolfies to turn a blind eye to this is simply to be willfully ignorant. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of NC State fans that will try to play this down. Oh, that's not true. You guys are delusional. No, we're not delusional. We're just calling it how it is, okay? And the simple fact of the matter is the University of North Carolina is a brand, okay, that bigger conferences, if they're going to expand, okay, they're going to want to tap into. It moves the needle, okay? Your brand doesn't move the needle like the University of North Carolina's brand does. It's just the truth, man, okay? So as much as I love the rivalry with NC State, they have literally, through this policy, become an anchor around the Tar Heels' ankles now with conference alignment. Now, just clarification on State fans with the football is king. We've been better at football lately. Our fan base is more passionate. We sell out our home games more often. Therefore, ipso facto, we are a better fit in a football conference. Okay, football is king, Mr. Wolfie. No disputing that whatsoever. Basketball has nothing to do with this realignment, as it truly is a far distant second fiddle in the college athletic landscape that we're currently in, bro. Nobody's disputing that, okay? No one is disputing that. Yes, could we argue that State has been more consistent on the gridiron than Carolina over the last 2 decades? Sure, bro. Got it. Yes, one could argue that State's fan base on the gridiron is more passionate about football than Carolina. We got it, bro. We got it, okay? But there's one thing you're lacking, period. It's the brand, man. You move the needle within the SEC and the Big Ten like Stanford and Cal and SMU do with the ACC, okay? Nobody is just like falling over themselves to go and grab you. And that's just the simple fact of the matter, man. All of that to say this. This is why it's important, okay? Not necessarily. The point of this is not to dig at NC State, okay? The point of this video is to show how through this policy change, okay, North Carolina is basically been hamstrung into being able to move because it's always going to be, well, what about NC State? We can't just leave them there, right? That's what it really is going to be about. The ACC grant of rights runs through 2036 currently, and it would cost the school between $300 and $400 million to leave early based off of everything that I've seen, okay? Unless there was a contractual loophole, which every lawyer has been trying to find. The ACC school ranks 4th in payout right now. This is getting into why this is important. The ACC schools rank 4th in payout with $39.4 million annually. The SEC received $49.9 million, and the Big Ten received $58.8 million. We're talking about $10 and $20 million more annually. And recent projections have shown that that gap will increase to $30 to $40 million per year more, which would effectively make it almost impossible for UNC to compete with the teams athletically in the SEC and Big Ten, man. It's an age where you are in a constant warfare of who has the better facilities, who can pay athletes more, etc., etc. And if these guys, these teams are making 20, 30, 40 million more a year, okay, that's going to kill Carolina. It doesn't matter how great the basketball program is. It just doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to compete on their gridiron. And that's why, basically in an effort to economically save the state of North Carolina, when you tie that NC State shackle around North Carolina's ankle, you're going to end up killing them both, right? Because you don't want to leave NC State, by itself. you are going to end up killing both of them, right? It's just the simple fact of the matter. Because now, if North Carolina is going to leave to either one, NC State's going to be right there dragging along. And whatever conference is going to take North Carolina is going to have to say, okay, we'll take NC State too. Kind of like USC and UCLA, right? NC State is the UCLA like UNC is the USC. That's just, it's the truth, man. That is the truth, okay? So you can like it or lump it. The whole point of this video, like I said, is to talk about how this really does bog down the University of North Carolina. I love the ACC. I love the history of the Atlantic Coast Conference. But at the same time, I love the University of North Carolina more. And we are getting dangerously close to basically removing ourselves from relativity. You know, from being a program that can sustain athletic success, because we're just not going to have the same amount of funding. So it's clearly in the best interest of the state of North Carolina to keep the ACC around as long as possible. And like I said, man, as much as I love this conference and its history, I fear that we are about to be stinking left behind, man. And this policy really does hurt the University of North Carolina. It doesn't help it at all, man. We're stuck in a terrible contract with the ACC, right? It's going to cost the university tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of the next decade if we stay here. And then you literally have NC State tied to our ankles, man. So that's just a little bit about how big, you know, this decision is. And, you know, a lot of people aren't going to like it. But you guys know how I am, man. I'm going to keep it 100 with you, okay? And if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be telling you the same thing. But it's not. That's just a simple fact of the matter. That's where we are. So let me know what you think about this down in the comments section. Do you think that the Board of Governors made a good decision on behalf of the ACC? Or what about on behalf of the University of North Carolina? What do you think about them making this decision? How good is this for NC State? Because I would say that NC State is actually the winner in this, and that you can't leave them behind anymore, which that's probably what would have transpired. And look, the Big 12 is a decent conference, but it's not the Big 10 or the SEC. And I think that it's one of those things where, because the Big 10 and the SEC aren't calling up the Raleigh, you know, but they're kind of beating around the bushes about, you know, potentially courting the University of North Carolina, this policy was put in place to make sure that the state of North Carolina doesn't end up like the state of California did not too long ago. So like I said, man, comment down in the comment section what you think about this. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you consider becoming a Huddle Hooligan. Just trying to keep it a buck with you guys, man. So I love you, Tar Heel Nation, and we'll catch you on the next one, baby.